Дорогие друзья, доброго всем здравия. Я приветствую всех, кто присоединился к нам на нашу лекцию, посвященную вопросам противовирусного иммунитета.
Dear friends, hello to everyone, and I'm wishing good health to everyone who joined today to our webinar dedicated to the immunological resistance to viruses.
Пожалуйста, напишите в чат, что у всех все в порядке с техническими моментами, вы меня видите, слышите перевод, и мы можем приступать к нашей лекции.
Please type plus in the chat if everything is okay with the technical part of our webinar, if you can hear me clearly and hear the translation as well. And let me introduce myself, as we have today participants from more than 50 countries already, and the total amount of people participating in today's event, the number of registrations is close to 700 already, and many people are not aware of who I am, so let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Alex Sorokin, and I'm educated within the classic medicine, and I did my postgraduate work in the topic of clinical immunology. But the scope of my scientific and clinical interest lies in the field of traditional medicine. That is why I gave my heart to traditional approaches. And for the past 20 years, I've been working thoroughly in the field of AYURVEDA, traditional Chinese medicine, and pulse diagnosis. And before we actually start the lecture, let me introduce my assistants. First of all, the voice of the webinar, the translator, Alexandra. Hello to everyone. And from the technical side, the person who moderates the chat and takes care of technical issues, Yana. And let's see in short what is the scenario or the plan of today's lecture. And I should warn you that you have to be patient today. We need at least 2 or 3 hours to go through all the questions that we have to overview. And the first question we will aim to answer to is, who is stronger in this dramatic fight between the human world and the world of viruses? And the next question that I would like to pay attention to, why in general the elderly people or the older generation is more prone to different viruses from a point of view of Ayurveda. And we will also talk about the main reason of the increase in the immunological resistance in general. And I will give you the key factors for analyzing the criteria of assessing the risks from the point of view of metabolic stress. And I will also give you the key sides of rehabilitation. And the first thing that I would like to draw attention to is that the mankind in general are the residents of the planet Earth for several millions of years, but the viruses have been here for almost the hundreds and even millions of years. So the main question is, who is the real host of the planet? And the viruses are, of course, the obligate parasites that can live only in a host cell. What is the way of infestation of the virus into the human body? This question is multidimensional. There are many ways, many pathways how the virus can actually get into the human body. But one of the ways of creation of a new virus and mutation of the virus and appearance of the virus in a human body is the meat eating. Everything that is living in this planet is infested or infected with viruses, plants, funguses, animals. We know that there are such entities as viroids. Viroids are the viruses of the plants. But the vegetarians may feel safer because viroids cannot invade the human cell. But the viruses that live in the meat can invade the human cell. That is why many people go enjoy vegetarianism, not only from the ethical or some spiritual points of view, but from the point of view of prevention and medical views, because it's much safer. And once the epidemic starts developing or spreading all over the world, some virus that has been circulating in the planet once a day becomes threatening to a person. The reason is that the animal virus was consumed with meat by human beings. And to be honest, it may be a little bit shocking for you, but the 10% of DNA genome of a person or of a human being is of a virus nature, but it has been scientifically proved. And those virus parts of our DNA are called the endogenous retroviruses by the scientists, and they can stay latent in the human's body for a long time. They can be sleepy there, but they can wake up. And here we have two variants. Either they become the helpers, the real helpers of the human's body, or they can carry some troubles with them. And the last time when the endogenous retrovirus took part, was inserted into the human's DNA, it was about 150,000 years ago, when the infestation of this virus in humans' DNA took many lives of human beings. It was like many years ago, but anyway, it was scientifically proved. And there is also some scientific data that shows that virus of immunodeficiency of the person, or simply AIDS, was there in human DNA for several thousands of years. And this pandemic that happened in the beginning of 80s was only a consequence of this presence of the virus in the DNA already. And according to scientific data, more than 27,000 of endogenous retroviruses has settled in the human's DNA for the past several millions of years. This is the huge vast of genetic information. And there is quite a reasonable scientific data that the human being evolved from monkey in the period of pandemia, when due to infestation of a certain kind of virus, there happened a mutation of genes associated with neurotransmitters of the human brain. And from the point of view of evolutions, viruses are the instrument of evolution that helps to form different new mechanisms. And how the virus gets into the human body. The thing is quite simple. Before virus particle gets into the human body, it has to possess the feature of be able to communicate with the human cells with the help of special receptors. If to talk about coronavirus in particular, the virus presented in the bats for a long time, but it couldn't harm or couldn't get into the human cell until the virus got the ability to communicate with the human cell. The moment virus gets into the cell of the human, it actually literally makes the cell to work just as a plant to produce new puzzles for development of the viruses. Due to this mechanism, the virus can leave the cell and harm other cells around it. But it may happen that the genome of virus gets into the genome of the human being and thus stop spreading and stay latent. And we may generally say that viruses are just like a God's will or God's power that drives the evolution and works towards making the person, the modern man, get new features and new tools. But sometimes that God's will has some kind of outsiders, helpers, because today the human progress, the progress of modern world reached the levels when when people can actually influence the nature. Before going further, I would like to quote one of the outstanding Russian scientists, Alexander Chizhevsky, who noticed that periods of solar activity match with the periods of pandemics and epidemic spreading on the planet. From one side, the statistic data doesn't lead us anywhere and doesn't have any practical use, but from the other side, there are many things that we yet don't know for sure. The information about the electromagnetic fields of Earth and gravitation that can suddenly make some shifts in the nature of the planet and bring some changes into the evolution and virulence of some viruses. As to modern coronavirus that is now spreading on the planet, there are some contradictory views about it. From one side, they say that this is like a natural battlefield where the one theory is that the coronavirus started spreading all over the planet due to the virus that was in the bats became virulent to humans. And another outstanding theory that is spread by other scientists is that coronavirus was created artificially in the special laboratories. And to support this idea, I found this article that is the article of 2015 from the Natural Medicine Journal. And the article tells us about the research made by American and Chinese scientists who actually took the coronavirus of the bat and made it pathogenic for the human being. I do not want to make any groundless conclusion because we don't have any substantial facts, but we all know that today it is quite possible to create such monsters in the modern laboratories, and this is the time when the ethical side of modern medicine becomes very much crucial, and we have to think about the responsibility that modern science has in front of the human beings. And if to talk about the coronavirus that we have today there is a lot of fake news and so much fake information about this whole thing that we can actually say that today we not only have the coronavirus pandemia and epidemics, but also the information pandemia. And if we actually see the data on the numbers of very dangerous virus infections that took place for the past 20 years on the planet Earth, we can see that virulence of coronavirus in comparison to other dangerous viruses such as avian virus and parotitis is actually low, because its percentage is about 3 and 4% among all the age groups if we take them together. For example, avian virus was about 30 and 40%. We understand that overall hysteria is caused by this modern state of things, because we all get information in real-time mode. And people get the feeling that there is a planet misery all over the place. But here's the official information on the contagiousness of different viruses, and we may see our coronavirus here, and we see that the person who is infected with the virus, it is in yellow in the center, we can see it. It can actually, before the manifestation of real clinical symptoms, infect not more than 2 or 3 people. And if we look at the other viruses such as rubella and chickenpox and measles, they are much more virulent from the point of view of aggressiveness in terms of spreading. And another slide that I would like to share with you is the information about the overall mass media hysteria among the residents of the planet. We can see that every year mass media threaten us with different Armageddons. For example, in 2001, we had the anthrax infection or Siberian plague. All the mass media spread the information that it will kill us all. In 2005, avian flu. In 2009, the swine influenza virus. In 2016, it was Zika virus. In 2019, the epidemic of measles that took place in European continent. I would like to draw your attention that it's not like the viruses are not dangerous, as they are, but the whole madness that's going on around the virus spreading brings more problems because people get obsessed in the whole information background. And if we talk not about the viruses and see the other problems that there are in the planet Earth, we would see that there are about 200 of thousands of people die daily from other problems, not the viruses. For example, every day 26,000 of people die from cancer, and about 24,000 die from heart attacks, and about 5,000 of people die for diabetes. And if we take the official statistics on the mortality rate in different countries for simple influenza virus, and influenza or flu is something that we got used to. We take it for granted and do not pay too much attention to it anymore. In USA, the rate of mortality of influenza yearly is the number of lethal outcomes of complications caused by the influenza virus in USA yearly is about 12,000. In Germany, it is about 3,000, and in UK is about 2,800. But these days, why this time it differs? Because of the nature of modern society. Today, we look at this problem as at the action movie. We see all the changes, all the new developments in the problem right away in the real-time mode. That is why the people get hysterical about all this. But I do not want to be neglect to the problem of appearance of coronavirus these days, because of course, if to compare the nature of the virus to, for example, the virus of flu, coronavirus is much more aggressive in its manifestations. That is why the measures that are taken by the World Health Organization and the healthcare systems of all the countries are really needed, because each particular life and each particular death is important. And before we actually start the basic material of the lecture, I would like to show you the the current data on the numbers of people that got infected. This information is on the European continent. It is provided by the World Health Organization. So by this moment, in the European continent, more than 100,000 of people got infected and actually have the confirmed results of or positive results on having coronavirus, and about 5,000 of people already died. And if we take the worldwide data, about hundreds of thousands of people got infected with coronavirus, and about 10,000 has already died for complications caused by the virus. And now let's see the clinical pathways of the development of coronavirus. It happens in several stages, and each stage can be independent. The first stage is the incubation period or the latent period, and it is quite symptomless from the point of view of caring. And here, if we talk about the age group, the children of the younger age has quite vague clinical manifestations of the virus. That is why scientists say that the children may be the main carriers and main spreaders of the virus. And after this stage, if immune system is not able to manage to fight with the virus, it turns into the acute respiratory viral state, which manifests just as an ordinary flu, which and the course of this stage is about 7 or 2 days, or 10 days, sorry. And it is important to draw your attention to the fact that according to statistical data, about 70 or even 80% of getting infected with the virus happens on this stage, the stage of trade flu manifestations. And the danger of this virus, as well as the epidemic flu, is that on the peak of immunological response to this virus, there happens the well-expressed intoxication that works towards the development of bacterial viral pneumonia, the next step in the clinical manifestations of the virus. And if it takes place, it can be supported. It can happen with respiratory insufficiency or without respiratory insufficiency. And about 10 or 15% of cases, the disease develops the severe outcomes. It is important that in most of the cases, those severe outcomes may be taken care by the doctors. They can actually manage to cure these severe states. And the third and the fourth stage, the most dangerous stages, where the acute respiratory distress syndrome happens on the third stage, and the sepsis and septic shock on the fourth stage. This is the stages where the lethal rate increases vastly, and even the modern measures cannot help fully. If we talk about clinical manifestations of the coronavirus infection, it has quite similar clinical symptoms as the ordinary flu, but anyway, it has some peculiar features. First of all, dry cough, the prolonged dry cough with small amount of sputum, and shortness of breath, which manifests on the earlier stages of the disease. This is the very much well expressed or typical feature for this coronavirus, the shortness of breath on the earliest stage of the disorder. That is why if you notice such symptoms, you should directly go to doctor right away. And the diagnostic advice is given by the World Health Organization. There are some non-specific diagnostic things that we could do. First of all, is testing of the level of C-reactive protein in the serum of the blood, because the concentration of C-reactive protein in the serum of the blood correlates closely to the severity, the level of the severity of the virus. And it is remarkable that for the people who initially had the increased level or increased threshold of systemic inflammation, even due to other reasons, not the course of the disease, they are in the risk group already. And the next way of diagnose the problem is the pulse oximetry measurement to detect the degree of respiratory failure. The modern smartphones has among their basic tools this pulse oximeter that can measure the concentration of capillary blood in the tip of your finger. This tool allows to measure the oxygen tension in the blood, the level of hypoxia. And if you see that the level of hypoxia or oxygen tension for you is higher than the numbers are higher than 95 or 98%, there is no hypoxia. If it is lower than 95%, it means that you are in a risk group in terms of severity and vulnerability to virus infections. And many countries have identified the genome of the virus, and it gave the chance to start working on the creation of vaccine. And according to latest data, in more than 60 countries, the scientists work on the development of 20 types of vaccine, and we understand that we can actually get the vaccine already in the second half of the summer, and by autumn we could have the real vaccine. And let's look at the mortality rate for coronavirus in different age group, and we can see that the higher mortality rate starts after 60 years of age, and the closer it is to 70, the higher it is. But this is the worldwide statistic. If we take statistics for Italy only, the main battlefield now in terms of coronavirus, we can see that mortality rate for the age of 70 takes about 20%, and this is very much sad. And now let's try to answer the question, why is the older generation more vulnerable to viruses? We had such a brief overview of what coronavirus actually is, some data of scientific basis, and what doctors and scientists think about this whole thing. And now let's turn to the main topic of our today's lecture, the traditional medicine point of view on the viruses. If you ask a modern medicine doctor why is the older generation more vulnerable to viruses, you will get the direct answer that, of course, it is associated with the fact that elder people have more problems, associated problems with health. That is why they get more complications. But this is only the top of the iceberg. And let's see what other causes and factors we have here. If we quote the National Gerontology Guidelines, and gerontology is the part of the medicine that takes care about the health of the elderly, we see the determination that that old age or aging are the physiological changes taking place in the human body, primarily associated with failure in the ability to adapt to metabolic stress. And I would ask you to remember this definition, metabolic stress. This is the notion we will talk about later many times. And the loss of the ability to adapt to metabolic stress starts not in the older age. It actually starts in the age 35 plus 40. From the point of Ayurveda, aging is the process that depends on two basic concepts, on two basic things, Agni and Ojas. And the decrease in the level of both leads to non-reversible aging. And on the other hand, the maintenance of both keeps youth for a longer time. And to say more, the metabolic stress has the potency to influence Agni, and Agni leads to the loss of Ojas. Ojas is our immune system. And once those two factors get decreased, we get the risks to lose our antivirus immunity. What is Ojas from the point of view of modern clinical physiology? According to Ayurveda, Ojas is the unique substance, the essence that determines the life sustainability of the tissues, the health and the longevity of the person. From the physiological point of view, the notion of Ojas is quite material, something that physiologists or biochemists can measure. Ojas is a quintessence of the entities of nervous, endocrine, immune, and partially of the reproductive system. Something more far-fetched here, but anyway, we can guess that Ojas as material substance can be associated with the hormones of cytic in nature, providing for regulation of the cell cycle. And it's quite clear, though, that Ojas is associated with the functioning of the immune system and the power of the body to fight with viruses and bacteria. If we look at the Ojas from this very point of view, we can outline two major compartments of Ojas. The column that you see on the left and the column that you see on the right. The entities of the innate immunity and the entities of the acquired immunity. And the efficiency of working of each component here in the innate immunity or in the acquired immunity is determined by the power of Ojas. And here you see the mechanisms of antiviral immunity, and each arrow here shows how efficient Ojas may be helping us to fight with viruses. Or, on the other hand, it can create some kind of a vulnerable place where the virus can get into the cells. If we try to overview the human body system to fighting with viruses, we see that human body has the powerful mechanisms for total fortification against the viruses, and not even one virus could get to the human body if those mechanisms work right. And those mechanisms, those fighting or defense mechanisms of the body are immunity or Ojas. And we can assess the power of Ojas by the methods of traditional medicines, in particular by a palpatory pulse diagnosis. And of all the mechanisms of our body in the fighting system against viruses, I would like to draw your attention to interferon hormones, because interferon hormones are the hormones that form the very resistance of the body to each and every virus. The interferon hormone is the special hormone secreted by the infected cell. The hormone reaches the healthy cell and warns it about the presence of the virus. And the healthy cell puts fortification around itself, so the virus cannot get into the cell and cannot get into its genome. Or this hormone may be synthesized by the activated lymphocytes, and the lymphocytes get activated during the infection. And the secretion of those hormones make the other cells, for example, the epithelial cells of the bronchial pulmonary tree, to fortify themselves against the viruses. And in the second part of my lecture, when we will be talking about the complex rehabilitation to increase the immunological resistance to viruses and increase antiviral capacity or Ojas, we will be talking about the plants that are able to induce the production of interferon in our body. And I will tell you about some special herbal composition that I take myself every day in a form of herbal tea. And this is the typical picture of the immune response of the body on a typical viral infection. The blue line stands for the concentration of viruses. And if it is a typical simple virus, such as flu, for example, it would take, it will last not more than 10 days. And parallelly with the development of virus in the body, there are certain cells that get activated with struggling to fight with the virus. First of all, it is the natural killer cells that do not need any additional activations. They start to fight with the virus right away and start killing the infected cells. And the next thing is interferon hormones. Those were the entities of the natural innate immunity, and if they are not able to fight with the virus, the acquired immunity starts working. Those acquired immunity includes lymphocytes killers, or they are also called cytotoxic cells, which start killing the infected cells. And at the same time, to the 5th or already 6th day of the development of the viral infection in the body, the antibodies are produced, and they may stay for a lifetime in a person's blood, keeping it safe from the virus. If to compare the modern coronavirus with epidemic flu, coronavirus does not mutate that fast. That is why if the person got infected once and produced the antibodies for this virus, it may be protected for the lifetime from this for this particular type of virus. That is why the whole world is waiting impatiently for vaccine to appear, to be created, to create a needed concentration of antibodies in our blood and make the body resistant to the virus for a lifetime. And we should understand that this is quite inevitable. According to prognosis of many scientists and medicals, the major population of the planet Earth will get infected with the coronavirus during the following 2 years. And only after the major part of the population will get immunized or will get sick with the coronavirus and get cured, when more than 30% of the population get the immunity antibodies for this virus, we will manage to overcome this problem. And when it happens, coronavirus will become not more than a seasonal flu that will circulate all over the planet. And in comparison to the epidemic flu, it will lose its virulence because the number of people who got immunized from the virus will be great. And we said that metabolic stress is one of the main reasons for decline in Ojas and Agni that forms these dramatic risks for elderly people in terms of severity of the development of the disease. And let's talk about what actually is metabolic stress. Let's give it a clear definition. The metabolic stress is the flow, the pressure that our cells and our tissues are suffering from in the caused by the flow, the constant flow of different metabolites and the secondary metabolites that are formed during the process of digestion. Every second in our body happens more than 40 billiards of biochemical reactions, which produces the formation of some new biochemical compound. And you understand that these intermediate metabolic products have their own life, and we either need to integrate it in the life of our body and use it for the needs of the body, transform it into a new biochemical compounds, or if we cannot assimilate it with our body, we should eliminate it. And if we take the modern concept of metabolic stress and the concept of AMA in traditional medicine, we can see that they match completely. If I ask you what AMA is, you will say that those are toxins that get accumulated in the body. But if we talk with a modern language, we should call AMA the intermediate metabolic products that we should deal with, either transform it into the useful material or eliminate. Here is the simplest chemical reaction picture. You see that each product that comes into our body has to undergo the basic biochemical transformation. And under the here works Agni, or the biochemical power of metabolism, where the product that came into the body got transformed, and we get the intermediary, secondary metabolic product. And this intermediate metabolic product is AMA itself, and we should deal with it effectively because this is the next stage of natural degradation of the product to the final product. And in terms of transformation of the initial product to the final product, according to the latest scientific data, microbiota takes the very important place. Thus, we understand that metabolic stress is the accumulation of intermediate metabolic products, or AMA, which become pathogenic entities working towards the development of metabolic declinations. We overviewed what Ojas is and metabolic stress, and now let's talk about Agni, because the power of Agni determines many things. First of all, Agni is the power of metabolism in tissues, or in dhatu, which allows transformation of all the intermediate metabolic products and assimilation of them by the cells. Most specialists working within in the field of Ayurveda, when they talk about Agni, they only say that they only talk about Agni as about the power of digestive fire, but Agni is much more than this. Of course, Agni is the digestive fire and digestive power, and here it works within hydrolysis of the products, and it determines the efficiency of assimilation of the products by the tissues. But it's not all, because also there are detox systems that help us to transform those metabolites that we cannot take care of, and the efficiency of working of detox system is determined by Agni also. And aside the classic organ systems that are the detox systems of our body, liver and kidneys, there are also lymphoid system and microbiota, the organ in the gut that takes the great role in the process of detoxification of the body. And if we talk about Agni as about the fire of digestion, we have two types of Agni here. Our own Agni presented by the enzyme system of our body and microbiota. And if we say that the power of Agni depends on the metabolic stress and associated with it and determined by it, we may get such an association that metabolic stress is interrelated with the state of microbiota. And a bit later, I will talk about the nuances around the antiviral immunity, which depends on Agni, being predetermined by the state of microbiota. And if you look at this graph shows the number of scientific articles in a very much official medicinal journals about the role of microbiota in the development of different common disorders, including inflammation and immunity issues. And before we go for a break, I would like to present you two more slides. If we talk about the human digestive system, which provide nutrients to our body, it is the symbiotic type of digestion. When the food item enters the digestive tract, it undergoes the procession by Agni, the enzyme system of our body, which provides hydrolyzation. Due to this process, the primary nutrients are getting absorbed by Rasa Dhatu. But the rest of the food comes further by the digestive tract, and it is processed by the other type of Agni, the Agni of microbiota, if you will. And just to compare, if we take one drop of fat, our own metabolic capacities, our own enzyme may withdraw about 20 types of fatty acids from one drop of fat. And the metabolic bacteria can withdraw about 400 of different fatty acids from one drop of fat. It's just to show you the relevance of digestion power of microbiota. Microbiota provides our body with a secondary flow of nutrients, the nutrients without which our body cannot live. But on the other side, during its own life, microbiota produces these bacterial metabolites, and bacterial metabolites can interfere with the internal environment of our body and increase the systemic inflammation threshold, increasing the risks of development of the tendency to be more vulnerable to different disorders, including viral infections. And if our own primary Agni getting decreased due to different reasons, it may happen that the body would not get the sufficient amount of primary nutrients. And then the vast part of the food is not get processed and goes to the colon when it is hydrolyzed by the bacteria, and not only the healthy and good bacteria, but also by the pathogenic bacteria. And due to the decreased state of our own Agni, we get the increased flow of negative bacterial metabolites, which provokes many pathogenic states, including the decrease in the antiviral immunity. And on the second part of the lecture, we will talk about the ways of diagnostic of antiviral resistance decrease and the holistic methods of measurement of antiviral resistance and metabolic stress. And we will talk about the methods of rehabilitation. And if we talk about the classical pulpatory pulse diagnosis, and I am being the disciple or the student of Dr. Vasant Lad's technique of measurement of pulse, and according to this technique, Ojas can be actually measured on the certain levels of the pulse. We measure or try to feel the Ojas pushes by the ringer fingers on the fourth level of the pulse. We measure it qualitatively by a simple 3-point system. We can measure it as a strong push, where we can say we have the strong immunological resistance, the balanced state, we can say it is the normal state, and the weak, the situation where we have the weak resistance systems. Aside the subjective or the pulpatory ways of measurement of the pulse, there are also the instrumental techniques. The instrumental techniques by which we can measure Ojas and other compartments. One of the developments is VedaPulse development or VedaPulse device, which was produced with the help of National Ayurvedic Medical Association of NAMA, and I am the main developer of this product. And this device is used for the assessment of the state of the patients for by more than 500,000 of specialists practicing in the field of traditional medicine. And this hardware and software device consists of independent modules which perform different tasks of their own. And one of the modules, the constitution module, shows this, has the integral indices tab, and we will talk about the two main tabs today. And here you can see the screenshot of the integral indices tab, and here we have two indices that are important for us now. The adaptation level index, which in terms of Ayurveda can be compared with the consumption or expenditure of ojas, and the health level, or the level of adaptation capacity to metabolic stress. And Ojas consumption index has its own scale, which as a traffic light shows the ranges which may be the declination from norm and normal states. And aside that we can measure the power of Ojas by the help of real palpation of the pulse, we can measure it instrumentally by looking at this index. If you see that for your patient this index is in the range between 30 and 50, it means that his immune system works in a balanced mode, and the power of Ojas is enough. If the range between 50 and 80, it means that the immune system is working in the state of tension due to the presence of antigenous stimulation. It means that there is a source of infection in the body and the immune system works with struggling. And if it is higher than 80, it means that the immune system shifted from the state of tension to the state of emaciation, when the reaction capacities of the immune system are lowered and reaction to antigenous stimulations are lowered in terms of antiviral activity. And as a rule, the index of Ojas consumption, which is higher than 80 points, shows the Vata Vikriti, the increased state of Vata in the body. And if the index is lower than 15 points, it shows Kapha Vikriti, the state of increased ama, accumulated ama in the body, the increased metabolic stress of Kapha type, and the increase of the performance of the immune system. And the next index, which is important in the diagnosis of the capacities of the body to be resistant to viruses, is the level of adaptation to metabolic stress. It is divided into 4 ranges, and the green range between 100 and 75 is the balance range. It means that the body is able to manage efficiently with the metabolic stress. The range between 50 and 75, the yellow range, shows the slight decrease in the capacity to deal with metabolic stress. It means that there is an accumulation of metabolic waste, which decreases as a result the ability of the body to resist to viruses. And the orange and the red range shows the lowered level of adaptation to metabolic stress, the accumulation, the higher ranges of accumulation of intermediate metabolites or AMA, the lowering of efficiency in the work of detox systems of the body, and the immune depression. And within the mathematical formula of this index, and this formula is quite complex, there are 4 independent factors that are listed here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And thus here we're not talking about the cellular assessment of the state of the immune system, the state of the levels of presence and concentrations of different immune cells and so on, but we rather talk about the holistic approach that we can measure by the instrumental technique of VedaPulse. And if you see that the index is in the range between 50 and 75, it is the yellow range, you may say for sure that there are. So if it is in a yellow range, detox systems are tense, they work with tension, they still continue to eliminate the metabolic waste, but they need more time and more resources to remove metabolic waste. and there is some the presence of metabolic stress. And as I already said, in this case, immune system works with tension, and as a result of prolonged antigenic load, it may manifest as some ricochet reactions, for example, as autoimmune reactions and processes. And systemic inflammation threshold is slightly increased, which also manifests as latent dysbacteriosis in the colon. And this situation works towards the development of the acute states into the chronic conditions. If you see that the patient's index is in the orange or red range, so if it is in the orange or red range, the DETEX systems are working at the verge of their capacities. It means that you can say for sure that AMA gets constantly accumulated and accumulated in the body. The metabolic stress is extremely high, and it suppresses Agni, suppresses Ojas, and the immune system. And the state of systemic inflammation threshold is high, which means that the chronic processes which are there in the person's body would be in a state in a constant development and worsening. And I will show you this index again. If the index of the person is lower than 50, it means that it is for sure that this person is in a risk group in terms of more severe, more complicated course of the viral infection in the body, not depending on the age. So we can say that not the age of the person is the main cause of the severe course of the disease. It is the metabolic stress. If the rather young person has the higher metabolic stress, he is in the risk group to develop more severe and complicated ways of the development of the disorder. There is a way to see exactly where AMA is getting accumulated, where the metabolic stress, the higher metabolic stress takes place in the body. There is a traditional way of seeing or diagnosing the state of accumulation of AMA and metabolic stress, and we automatized it in our device, and thus you can see on the tongue the reflection of the places of metabolic stress and accumulation of AMA. And of course, one of the main measurement or diagnostic tools here is the module, which is the main module showing the organ systems of the body, or meridians, as we call them in the traditional Chinese medicine. And if on the meridians you see that the second meridian or the second functional system, which is associated with a colon or large intestine, is in imbalance, it means that there is a tendency to increase of the systemic inflammation and increase of the systemic inflammation threshold that leads to the development of pathogenic states, and as a result, the decrease in immunological capacities. Another important diagnostic feature is the measurement of one of the subdoshas, as the subdosha which is important as the regulation system, Apana Vayu. Apana Vayu is considered as the system of communication with our microbiota. And another diagnostic criteria that can be used for the measurement of antiviral resistance of the body is the VedaGenetics module. If you see that there is a risk of polymorphism for certain genes, and in particular we may talk about the TNF alpha gene, which is the systemic pro-inflammatory cytokine, and it is responsible for the levels of severity of the course of virus infections. Now, these days, many scientists say that there is some genetic predispositions to more severe course of viral infections, and we can measure it mathematically. And I would like to invite you to our online seminar on pulse diagnosis on April 4 and 11, when we will learn all the diagnostic features and capacities of VedaPulse as the diagnostic instrument. And my assistants will share the link in the chat, and if you want to get detailed information about the event, you can follow the link and see it. For Russian audience, the seminar will take place on the 18th of April. And now let's talk about the ways of increasing our immunological resistance. And here I want to draw your attention to the fact that we are going to talk about only the measures of prophylaxis and prevention for healthy people, the ways of making our body less prone to severe course of the diseases. If you see any symptoms of the disease, you should go address the doctors right away. You should not neglect the problem, because the virus is very much aggressive. So we are talking now only about the ways of prevention. And my recommendations will be based on the such basic things as how to decrease the level of metabolic stress. I will share some protocols that I use myself with my patients, how to increase the production of interferon hormone in our body by Ojas or immunological resistance of our body, and how to work on the lowering of the level of systemic inflammation threshold. And if to talk about the recommendations of World Health Organizations on scientifically proved efficiency of some drugs, there are some examples, and I'm not going to hover over those for a long time, because it is not the indoors but outdoors treatment. And first of all, we will going to talk about the program of preliminary detoxification to reduce metabolic stress, the program that will help to reduce metabolic stress, not depending on the age. The protocol that I'm going to share with you is quite easy and simple. It does not require any dramatic or big changes in the lifestyle of the person, but at the same time it is quite effective and gives real result in terms of the accumulation of AMA and metabolic stress reduced. This program may be prescribed to any person for the increase of immunological resistance. And first and foremost, of course, is the correction of diet. And during the period of epidemic spreading, the diet should be really light. It should not be burdened by the heavy fats, heavy meat fats, refined carbohydrates, and it should be filled with plant fibers. We should produce lightness in the body. We should not increase the metabolic stress, but overeating and burdening the body with heavy food. But at the same time, the food that you eat should be nutritive and sufficient. You should not, as we say, feed yourself with the air only. And aside the plant fibers that should take about 50% of our daily ration, or not daily ration, of our meal, a single meal, in a thermally processed form or fresh form. Aside of that, we should take some probiotics products. And the products that have the probiotic features are the products rich with good bacteria, but we should not overuse them, because those are the milk products, the sour milk products, and as you know, milk is the product that can increase the production of AMA. It would be great if we increased the consumption of different condiments or spices, and we could use the Ayurvedic spice or Ayurvedic remedy, Tricato. And I will remind you about the compounds of Tricato. Tricato consists of ginger and 2 types of pepper, and it increases Agni greatly. And if you have the strong Agni, the vulnerability to viruses decreases. And another 3 stages of preliminary detoxification is therapeutic fasting, the intake of some special nutraceuticals, and modified Virechina therapy. And here is the example of Predox program, which was built for the particular patient that who we measured or assessed by VedaPulse. For example, if you assess the patient and see that there is an decreased level of adaptation power to metabolic stress, the program would last for a month. And if you see that the person's index of adaptation to metabolic stress is in the orange-red range, it means that in such a state of a great accumulation of waste, the program should last not less than 2 months. And the therapeutic fasting or the healing fasting for the person whose range whose index in the yellow range would take not more than 1-2 days per month. And this is not a dry diet. The person would take about 2.5 up to 3 liters of water during the day, but no food. And for the person whose index is in the orange-red range, the healing fasting would take place every week. We would recommend for a person to have fasting 1 or 2 days a week. It would help to reload the autophagy and thus increase the capacity to adapt to metabolic stress. We also recommend a person to take multi-symbiotic drugs that would help microbiota to work efficiently. One of such products is VedaPulse product, and I will tell about it more detailed later. And another nutraceutical that we recommend, and it is quite well known as it is a canonic Ayurvedic drug Triphala, based on the canonic Ayurvedic drug Triphala. It is Trifalax, and it helps to eliminate the products of the increased bacterial activity. And this is we recommend to take 2 tablets of Trifalax at night. And for the person whose index is in the orange and red level, we recommend some remedy that would help to stimulate the bile system. The 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil plus 1 cup of rosehip tea or broth. The bile is the very much powerful antiseptic, antibiotic tool that helps to eliminate the bacterial products from the colon, thus it helping to increase our immunological resistance and decrease the metabolic stress. And on this stage, there is no direct influencing the immune system. Here, the preliminary detox system aimed at the decreasing of the level of metabolic stress, which is the main cause for the increase of risk to reduce of the immunological resistance of the body and increase of metabolic stress. And this is the multi-symbiotic that I use in my practice, VedaBiotic. In fact, you may use any multi-symbiotic which is available in your country, but there should be some criteria of the choice. And the first criteria is the amount of the good bacteria. There should be not less than 4 billions of bacteria per 1 gram of the product. And the second thing is the diversity of the strains of the bacteria, so it would be more effective. And the role of microbiota in the increase of antiviral immunity and increase in the immunological resistance of the body is scientifically proved many times. And the latest article that appeared in the January of this year, it says that beneficial bacteria activate type 1 interferon production via the intercellular cytosolic sensors. That is why if you try to increase the antiviral immunity, one of the things that you have to do is to think about the state of microbiota. And as I already said, as a helper to multi-symbiotic products, we can use the remedies on the basis of Triphala. It is Triphala Max. It is a complex product which helps to decrease the level of systemic threshold. And now let's see the evidence-based herbal medicine to understand what plants can help us in the situation of the world pandemic. And I would like to quote this unique article. This is the new scientific article that was published quite like a couple of weeks ago. It tells about the efficiency of usage of medicinal plants in the treatment of people in 23 provinces in China in the period of coronavirus infection outbreak. About 20 medicinal plants were under the research, and 2 plants showed the highest efficiency in the treatment. I will tell you about them. Those are astragalus root and licorice root. And only for those who are online today with us, we will share my 100 slides presentation with all the data, all the statistics data, all the links that you could use with your patients, with your students. And the first group of medicinal plants that we should use when we try to create a complex herbal composition for the prevention of viral infections is the interferon-inducing plants. And of course, we could talk about such classic plants, which are in classic textual botanic literature, is described as the real inducers of interferon and the plants that have the well-expressed antiviral effects, such as onion and garlic. But I would like to talk about another plant, the wild garlic. And also another plant I would like to talk about is echinacea, and as an example of its efficiency I will tell you about the several double-blinded randomized researches which proved the efficiency of echinacea. The wild garlic has been used for many years as immunomodulating and antiviral remedy, but there are recent scientific researches that has proved at the scientific level the efficiency of this plant. This is the very time, the very season, the end of March and the beginning of April, when wild garlic starts growing in the fields, and we can start using it as a food for preventive measures. And if we talk about the immunomodulating plants, the best seller here is echinacea. And if you look at the prabhava of this plant, it is immunostimulant. And this data is according to the books of Atreya Smith, the outstanding herbal therapist of Ayurveda. And if we talk about the clinical proof by Western herbal science, there were several researches that showed clearly that the intake of echinacea reduces the risks of the development of recurrent acute respiratory disorders and increase the immunomodulating resistance of the body. And other researchers showed that taking echinacea shortens the course of the disease on one hand, and on the other hand, it decreases its severity. Another group of medicinal plants that we should think of when we try to compose a complex herbal composition for increasing our immunity is adaptogenic plants. According to Ayurveda, if we talk about adaptogens plants, they balance tejas in a mild fashion and are capable to restore prana. And here are just some examples of adaptogenic plants that are very much efficiently used by Russian herbalists. And here is the plant that I would like to hover onto is the Chinese magnolia vine. The fruits of this plant has the well-expressed adaptogenic, antioxidant, immunomodulating, and hepatoprotective action. Those are the very qualities that we need. So we will put plus here to this plant. Another group of plants that we need to include in our herbal composition is the plants of non-steroid and anti-inflammatory effect. And here we can see the licorice, the very plant that was described by the article. If you remember the article when we were talking about the methods that traditional Chinese medicine specialists used in the treatment of disorders. And me personally prefer to use beside the licorice the white willow, as it is the high concentration and effect of this plant may be compared with the effect of aspirin. This plant has the very much well expressed anti-inflammatory effect. Another group of plants that we should use in the composition of our herbal compound is the anti-hypoxant plants. And if you remember, hypoxia is one of the pathogenic manifestations of the disorder of coronavirus. All the medicinal plants that I put here in my slides have the scientifically proved efficiency in their groups, and you can trust my word or make your own researches, the information. And among those, we can see astragalus, the very plant that was used by the traditional Chinese medicine specialists that were described in the article above. Thus, anti-hypoxant plants increase the resistance of the tissues to hypoxic load, and during the acute hypoxia, they increase the severity of the process. And aside of astragalus, I prefer to use crataegus, as it is a very much strong anti-hypoxant plant. And if we see the description of hawthorn or crataegus in Dravya Guna, we may find that it has the well-expressed adaptogenic and anti-hypoxant actions. And another group of plants that I recommend to use in the creation of herbal composition when you're struggling with a viral infection is the anticoagulant medicinal plants, anticoagulant of mild action, not very much well expressed anticoagulant action. During the presence of virus infection in the body, there may occur the densening of the blood with the formation of thrombosis, especially on the background of intoxication and cardiac disorders. And here I prefer the very much well-known plant, the greater burdock, which has the well-expressed blood purifying and lymph purifying and antipyretic effect. And here the herbal composition that I have created, you can take it as a basis or the roadmap, if I may say so. You can make some modifications according to the availability of the materials that you have in your country. And here, cheers to your health. And here, what we take here, first of all, it is the anti-inflammatory effect of white willow. Also, the adaptogenic and anti-hypoxant effects of astragal, and you can take any type of astragal because any type of astragal has these features in this or that degree. The anti-hypoxant effect of the greatest power of crataegus, the greatest immunomodulating and antiviral effect of echinacea, anti-inflammatory mild hormonal effect of licorice, the powerful adaptogenic effect of Chinese magnolia vine, mild anticoagulant and anti-inflammatory effect of the burdock root, and the 2 or 3 week of constant or daily intake of such herbal composition on the background of the undergoing through the preliminary detox program will strengthen your immune system sufficiently. To make it possible for you to easily create your own herbal composition, the VedaPulse developed this special outstanding module, Herbal Encyclopedia. This module describes more than 300 of medicinal plants, and more than a half of these medicinal plants are the plants of European part of the world. And they are described for the position of three medicines: Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, and Western clinical herbology. And after assessing the heart rate of the person, you get the personified estimation of the efficiency of each and every herb in terms of its efficiency for this particular person. It took me 7 years to develop a full version of this non-biased way of assessment, so you can just take it and use it. And what we can use aside herbal therapy? Of course, staying now in a quarantine in our apartments, in our dorms, we can fill them with the natural power of aromas. And in the VedaPulse hardware and software program, we have the aromatherapy module, which would help you to create aroma compositions on the professional level. Among the medicinal aromas and essential oils that you can use now, I recommend the pine oil or any fir tree oil. For example, this very aroma oil has antibacterial, anti-inflammatory effects. And of course, the tea tree oil that has the well-expressed antiviral, antiseptic, and anti-inflammatory effects. And of course, the eucalyptus oil, which is traditionally used in the seasons of sickness with flu and so on. Aside of undergoing the preliminary detox programs and using the herbals and using the oils, of course, we should do some modifications with our lifestyle. Just let yourself get the all benefits of Surya Namaskar and Pranayama, which will increase your immune system sufficiently. And of course, you can use the meditation module, which could show you the dynamics of the indices during the usage of restorative breathing, if this is the method that you use to increase your immunological resistance. And of course, during the viral activity period, it is very much essential to stimulate your energy points. And here I recommend you to work with the special EHF device. After the assessment of the patient, the program module generates the special recipe for working with biologically active points and marmas, and you can work with them with a special portative device of the millimeter range influence. And today, this is quite a common situation that doctors had to close or shut their work at clinics and stay at home due to self-isolation or due to quarantine. And VedaPulse can provide you with remote telemetry for working with a patient. And here we can also help your patient to get the VedaPulse home device at our expenses. Your patient will get the program, will be able to go through the learning with our technical specialist how to use the program. So the patient would be able to share with you the results of the unbiased, objective assessment of his state, and you will be able to give him effective recommendations. So let's draw some conclusion. First of all, we need to assess what risk group the person is in. First of all, we need to assess his or her Ojas level and the level of adaptation to metabolic stress. And of course, while the virus is spreading all over the planet, we should prepare our body to the fight. So we should undergo some preliminary detox program, first of all. Use multi-symbiotics to improve our microbiota. Use herbal remedies and aroma oils. And also do not forget about stimulation and working with your energy or PowerPoints and practice breathing exercises. And of course, the easiest but the basic thing is to follow a healthy lifestyle. Do some simple personal hygiene measures. This webinar was organized with the help of National Ayurvedic Medical Association of Russia. I hope it was helpful and useful for you. And I would like to invite you to our online Congress, Ayurvedic Approach to Viral Infections, that will take place at April 5th, 2020, where the specialists from many countries, Australia, India, North America, Europe, would share the information on their view of Ayurvedic approaches to viral infections. And VedaPulse could help you anyway to support your decision, even in such a tough situation when virus is spreading all over the world. You could use VedaPulse to work with your patient remotely. And thank you for attention. I wish you health, and again, health and only health. I wish you the energy, the enthusiasm, and of course the positive thinking. Don't lose your positive mode. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and don't have time to answer all your questions, but we will do it distantly. I wish you luck. Thank you all for attention.